The Marx Brothers, one of the funniest and most enduring comedy teams in the history of stage and screen. But were they really brothers? And if so, how many were there exactly? Well, that all depends on your point of view.
The first son born to Sam and Minnie Marx was named Manfred, and he was born in 1886, but we'll never know what kind of Marx brother he would have become because he died when he was 7 months old. Years later, we asked Groucho what Manfred died of, and he said, old age.
The following year, Mr. and Mrs. Marx welcomed another son, Leonard, who would later earn the nickname Chico.
I got my name when I was about 15 years of age. I used to chase the chickens. I still chase them, but I don't catch them anymore. I'm just waiting for a rainy day. I'm good in the mud.
1 year after Leonard's birth, another Marx brother came into the world. His name was Adolf, which was later changed to Arthur, but audiences would learn to love him as Harpo because of his affinity for a certain stringed instrument. In October of 1890, Julius H. Marx entered the world. He would eventually be called Groucho because of his cynical disposition.
You know who sneaked into my stateroom at 3 o'clock this morning? Who did that? Nobody, and that's my complaint.
3 years later, yet another son was born to Sam and Minnie. His name was Milton, but he came to be called Gummo because of his preference for wearing gum-soled shoes. Finally, in 1901, the last Marx brother, Herbert, was born. He would be known as Zeppo, although the exact reason for his nickname is shrouded in mystery.
My name is Sammy Brown, and I just came into town. Saw your ad, you Mr. Lee, so you can make a mint on me.
How did they get their start? Well, Minnie, their mother, was a classic stage mother, and she pushed all of the boys into performing. Also, Minnie's brother Al Sheen, the real name was Schoenberg. He was half of the very famous vaudeville team of Gallagher and Sheen.
I had an uncle who was a comedian, and he was making $250 a week. And all the doctors I knew around that time were making around 18. So I decided to skip the Hippocratic Oath and get right into show business.
That was Al Sheen of Gallagher and Sheen, wasn't it?
Gallagher and Sheen, yes. That was my mother's brother.
Oh, Mr. Sheen, oh, Mr. Sheen. Here in Egypt they have styles I've never seen. All along the River Nile, the girls wear nothing but a smile. That's why I'm here, Mr. Gallagher. That's why I'm here, Mr. Sheen.
Uncle Al was very supportive of his nephew's interest in show business, and even wrote some of their earliest material.
Groucho was actually the first of the brothers to enter show business around 1905 as a singer, not as a comedian. And then gradually Gummo and Harpo and then finally Chico joined the act, but still it was predominantly a music act rather than a comedy troupe.
Curiously, it was Chico, the compulsive womanizer, who was the first to get married. In 1917, he and 19-year-old Betty Karp tied the knot. The following year, their only child, Maxine, was born. One of the songs in the brothers' vaudeville act was Peasy Weezy, which they purchased from a fellow vaudevillian for $27.
Of all the smells I ever smelt,
Well?
I never smelt a smell like that smell. Peasy Weezy, what's his name? Peasy Weezy, what's his game? He will get you if he can. Peasy Weezy is a full bad man.
As their onstage characters slowly developed, comedy began to take priority over music, although music would always remain an important element of their work. Then, in 1918, Gummo left the act to join the Army and went off to fight World War I. He turned his back on show business as a performer forever. 17-year-old Zeppo replaced him as the straight man. Since Harpo had trouble delivering lines, he ended up performing entirely in pantomime. which might have made him a prime candidate for silent films. As a matter of fact, he did appear in a 1925 Richard Dix comedy called Too Many Kisses. And Herbert Marx, alias Zeppo, made a brief appearance that same year in a silent Adolphe Menjou comedy called A Kiss in the Dark. Actually, the four Marx brothers did try their hand at making a silent comedy several years earlier. It was called Humor Risk. This photo of the cast and crew is the only image known to have survived. After sharpening their skills on the vaudeville stage, the Marx Brothers scored big on Broadway in 3 productions. I'll Say She Is in 1923, The Coconuts in 1925, and Animal Crackers in 1928. While Animal Crackers was still being performed live on Broadway, the brothers made their first film for Paramount out on Long Island.
Then they did Coconuts, and that was sold to Paramount. I think they had a 5-picture deal at that point. And then while he was playing Animal Crackers on Broadway, he was shooting Coconuts in Astoria during the daytime. Shows you what energy they had in those days, shooting a movie in the daytime and doing the play at night.
By the late 20s, their struggling vaudeville years behind them, the Marx Brothers had become wealthy Broadway stars. Then Wall Street threw them a curve.
I got cleaned out in '29. I had $250,000 saved from many years of rooms without bath and Greek restaurants. And I lost it all in 48 hours.
Hard hit by the stock market crash, the Marx Brothers began to rebuild their fortunes by appearing in another film based on one of their stage successes, Animal Crackers.
Captain Spaulding, you stand before me as one of the bravest men of all time.
All right, I'll do that.
How do you do?
What do you fellas get an hour?
Oh, for playing, we get $10 an hour.
I see. What do you get for not playing?
$12 an hour.
Well, clip me off a piece of that.
Now, for rehearsing, we make special rate. That's $15 an hour.
That's for rehearsing?
That's for rehearsing.
And what do you get for not rehearsing?
You couldn't afford it.
You haven't got chocolate, have you?
Take the professor's hat and coat.
And send for the fumigators.
Oh, my...
Bonjour de la part.
Get out.
After Animal Crackers, the Marx Brothers headed west to continue their lucrative Paramount contract. Their first official Hollywood film was Monkey Business in 1931. It typified the freewheeling craziness of their early pictures.
Don't try to hide. I know you're in that closet.
Did you see me go in the closet?
No.
Am I in the closet now?
Well, no.
Then how do you know I was in the closet? Your Honor, I arrest. My case, right here. Are you the floor walker here? What? I want to register a complaint.
Why, what's the matter?
Matter enough. Do you know who sneaked into my stateroom at 3 o'clock this morning?
Who did that?
Nobody. And that's my complaint.
To promote Monkey Business, the brothers appeared in a short film celebrating Paramount's 20th anniversary. They recreated a sketch they'd done on stage 7 years earlier in I'll Say She Is.
Poop-poop-a-doopy.
Hey, what do you think you are?
Hey, wait a minute. You know who this is?
No.
He sells frankfurters at the Merchant of Wieners.
Well, what do you want? My name is What Do You Care? My home is anywhere. People say I'm awful dumb, so I thought to you I'd come. Say, listen, what is it?
Now, just a moment. Wait a minute. He might be crazy. Wait, I'll find out. You want to go on the stage? Crazy.
Say, listen, you tell me what you want or I'll throw you... Never mind that. I'll give you a punch.
Now, wait. Take your time. This fellow's a good dancer. Dance for him.
Say, thank heaven there's no Chevalier imitation.
Well, what do you think of him, Mr.
I
Lee?
wouldn't give him $1 a week.
Not so loud, he'll take it.
Yep.
Now, listen, you're making a big mistake. These fellas are very clever. They're funny fellas. And I've got a play that I've written that I'd like to explain to you. I'd like to read this manuscript for you. It's a wonderful play, and these fellas would fit in it. Now, if you could just come over and sit down with me for a minute, I'll explain the whole thing to you.
Also at Paramount, Chico and fellow comic W.C. Fields flirted with some female fans.
We're not signing any autograph books. You may sign our books and leave your phone number.
Hey, Bill, that's last year's book. Maybe it's last year's girls, Bill. We can bring them up to date, too.
An idea.
I saw her last year.
After completing work on Horse Feathers, the Marxes were immortalized in wet cement at Grauman's Chinese Theater. The brothers also attended a Halloween party, Hollywood style.
Zeppo Marx, wearing the toupees of 10 other male stars, from that great Hollywood mystery, To Pay or Not to Pay. Groucho Marx as Rex the Wonder Horse, and Gary Cooper as, well, your guess is as good as mine. Chico Marx as one of the witches of Endor, but we don't know which end.
By the early 30s, Groucho was married to a former chorus girl named Ruth Johnson, and they had 2 children named Arthur and Miriam.
How did you have the time to really bring up a family the way a normal father would?
Because I enjoyed it. I didn't do it as a duty. I had 2 small children that I was crazy about, and I don't think I made any sacrifices.
But I had a good time, and he was a good father, and as a matter of fact, he helped me with a lot of the writing I did at Beverly High. Matter of fact, I remember winning an American Legion essay contest that he helped me write.
One day I was going through material at Groucho's house, and I ran across a can of film, and inside was a home movie of Groucho and his family from 1933. And it's fun because he's sort of poking fun at sentimental family films with the way they shot it. The sad part is that Ruth's increasing alcoholism meant that the actual picture of Groucho's family life was a lot less idyllic than shows up in those home movies.
Why do you think it is that so many of the youngsters of the famous names get into trouble?
Well, I think it's partly what they see at home. If they see the parents boozing, the kids are apt to grow up and drink. And we weren't drinkers. I never was a drinker.
Well, he was depressed all the time because he was having trouble with my mother. He was a very good father, but my mother was a drinker, and he didn't like drinking, and he didn't like a wild Hollywood life, and she was much younger than he was. And she wanted to go out to the Trocadero and all those places, and he wanted to stay home because he'd been on the stage all his life at night. So this was his first opportunity to be home. He had a pool table, and he loved to play pool with me, and he loved to have dinner at home, and then he liked to sit down and play Gilbert and Sullivan on the phonograph and sing along with them. And he loved to read. But my mother didn't like that sedentary life. And that's what caused him to be, he got depressed because I guess he wasn't happy.
In 1933, the four Marx Brothers made their last, and arguably their funniest film for Paramount, Duck Soup.
Oh, Your Excellency, I must speak to you.
I'll see you at the theater tonight. I'll hold your seat till you get there. After you get there, you're on your own.
Hello? Hello, yes? No, he's not in yet. All right, well, goodbye. That was for you again.
I wonder whatever became of me. I should have been back here a long time ago.
They got gone, we got gone, all our children got gone.
After making Duck Soup, Zeppo, tired of being the fourth wheel on a tricycle, left the act.
After the first 5 pictures, he dropped out, became an agent, and then Gummo, who was the 5th one, had been in the dress business in New York, and the dress business folded during the Depression. And so he went into the agency business with Zeppo, and the two of them built Zeppo Marx Agency into one of the biggest agencies in town, and that became the nucleus of MCA.
With Zeppo literally out of the picture, the four Marx Brothers became, not surprisingly, the three Marx Brothers.
Good evening, everybody. There's really nothing I can do because Harpo was in Russia, Chico was in the theater, and Zeppo heard that I was going to make a speech here tonight, so he didn't show up at all.
For once, Groucho wasn't joking. Harpo really did go off to Russia in 1933, as this rare newsreel shows. Chico and MGM's wunderkind Irving Thalberg shared a passion for poker. This led to a contract at Metro for the Marx Brothers in 1935, and one of their finest pictures.
I've been sitting right here since 7 o'clock.
Yes, with your back to me. When I invite a woman to dinner, I expect her to look at my face. That's the price she has to pay. Your check, sir. $9.40? This is an outrage. If I were you, I wouldn't pay it.
Stewart?
Come right ahead.
Hey, Marco, the food!
Been waiting all afternoon for you,
Comes to the
Stewart.
food. Come on.
You're fired. Do you understand? You're fired. Hey, you big bully. What's the idea of hitting that little bully?
Will you kindly let me handle my own affairs? Get out. Now, what do you got to say to me?
Just this. Can you sleep on your stomach with such big buttons on your pajamas?
Why, you...
After completing Night at the Opera, Harpo, at 48, gave up bachelorhood to marry actress Susan Fleming. They quickly adopted 4 children so that, according to Harpo, there could be one in each window of their home, waving goodbye to him as he left for work each day. Even in the 30s, Hollywood loved sequels, and so, as Night Follows Day, the successful Night at the Opera was followed by the even more successful Day at the Races.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please. During the next presentation, may I request your absolute silence, for I have a message of great importance for everyone in the audience. Now remember, please, absolute quiet.
Either he's dead or my watch has stopped.
May I have one of your photographs?
Why, I haven't one. I can let you have my footprints, but they're upstairs in my socks.
I want you to hold me. Hold me closer, closer, closer.
If I hold you any closer, I'll be in back of you.
I got a message from the man on the moon for you.
On a blue nation of waters, together, on hidey, hidey, hidey.
During production, the Marx Brothers' champion Irving Thalberg died suddenly at age 37. From then on, their films declined in quality, due partly to the fact that Louis B. Mayer hated them and found their comedy vulgar.
So he used to say to me, look, if you have a great acting talent, that's fine. He said, but if you just want to be an actor, because I am, don't, because it's a rotten business anyway. Oh, yeah, he didn't like acting. He didn't like actors too much. He'd rather be around all his writing friends, and those were mostly his friends, George Kaufman and Nunley Johnson and Maury Riskin.
Groucho always had a lot of respect for writers, and I think he would rather have been a writer than an actor. He wrote a number of books and also the script to a 1937 Joan Blondell film called The King and the Chorus Girl that was loosely based on the romance between King Edward VIII and Wallis Simpson.
That same year, Groucho engaged in a goofy game of tennis with fellow comic Charlie Chaplin and tennis champs Ellsworth Vines and Fred Perry. Chaplin's wife, Paulette Goddard, took some home movies, and Douglas Fairbanks Sr. watched the match. After it was over, the foursome had a picnic right on the court. Despite his acceptance by the literary crowd, Harpo wasn't really the scholarly type.
He was quiet, not an intellect. Everybody thought he was because he hung around the Round Table group in the Algonquin in New York, but he really wasn't. He really wasn't much of a reader, and he wasn't a writer either. I remember he once sent my father a telegram on his birthday, and all it said was, "No message, Harpo." He was nice. He was a family man, and he loved to practice the harp, and he loved to paint, and he loved to play croquet, and he loved to be around the house, and he loved his family.
We got a bagger, we got a bagger.
Taking a breather from MGM, Groucho, Chico, and Harpo starred in the film version
Room service
of a hit Broadway show over at RKO. It co-starred Lucille Ball and a teenage girl who would go on to have a big career in musicals.
Working with the Marx Brothers was great fun for me. When I first met the Marx Brothers, my mother was with me, and we went on this big sound stage because I did room service with them. And the first thing that Harpo did was drop his pants and chase me around the whole sound stage with that horn that went beep, 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 and it scared me to death, you know. But that was my first picture with them, and that was at RKO when I went under contract to them. I think it was my third or fourth picture at RKO, and I wasn't quite, let's see, I was 15 when I did it.
The Marxes also found themselves popping up in animated form.
Now listen, babe. I'm about a few words, see? I've been chasing you all night. Now, how about a little kiss, baby?
Well, fancy meeting you here.
Back at MGM in 1939, the Marx Brothers began work on a trio of films that were clearly inferior to their earlier work.
If you please, Mr. Carter.
What is it?
Can I have a month off next August?
What for?
Well, you see, I just got a word from my lawyer. He got me a divorce. And 1 month every year, I win the custody of my wife's parents.
Perhaps you'll think I'm forward, but last night when I first saw you...
And slammed the door in my face.
I realized that you're the man I've been dreaming of.
What do you eat before you go to bed?
Pardon me, madam, but here are the seating arrangements for your final approval.
Oh, no, Whitcomb. Judge Channock will sit on my left hand, and you will sit on my right hand.
How will you eat? Through a tube?
The Circus was followed by another disappointing production that, like all of their films, still had its moments.
Nobody can outshoot two-gun Quail. Boys, sweep him out of the gutter. It's just like a movie.
Don't be afraid. If any trouble starts, we'll telephone for help.
Telephone? This is 1870. Don Amici hasn't invented a telephone yet.
Say, if you want to stay healthy, I'd keep shy a little, Bill. She's Red Baxter's girl.
Red Baxter? Who's Red Baxter? We'll settle this right now. Where's Red Baxter? Here. Where? Here. Where? Here. You should have been home. The pot of gold called.
In 1941, their popularity waning and their contract up, the Marx Brothers decided to stop making movies. This trailer for their final MGM effort plays on their intended exit from the motion picture business.
The Marx Brothers are retiring from the silver screen.
That's right, folks. We're on our way.
That's all right, folks, but where do we go from here?
And so, to all of you, a fond farewell. We
know you cared. But since you do, we'll present to you songs and scenes from our first farewell picture, The Big Star,
where everything's a goodbye.
Goodbye.
I have just hired Mr. Flywheel as a floor walker.
Well, Martha, we have enough floor walkers.
Please.
However, if you desire, what experience have you had in a department store?
I was a shoplifter for 3 years.
I used to do this in vaudeville.
Hey, look.
It's only a woman.
That's a fine. Let there be wine.
And women.
And a song.
And women.
And caviar.
And women. Let them hear us jump a mile. Susie Q, the latest style. Boogie, boogie, up the island swing. Swing. Sing while you
Even if the Marx Brothers as a team disbanded after the big store, each did his fair share to help out as World War II went into full swing.
Fellas, you're all in pictures.
Hey! Take your hat off. Can't you see the ladies?
Groucho made a number of radio appearances during the war, including this armed service show with pretty Carol Landis.
Isn't this wonderful, Groucho?
Wonderful? What's wonderful about it? Where are all the girls?
Girls? Did you expect to see girls at a Marine camp?
Of course. Where's Maureen O'Sullivan and Maureen O'Hara and Maureen Dietrich? Semper Fidelis. I love those Marines.
Hello, Groucho. Hello, Bobby.
Why, Carol Landis.
Will you sing me a song of the West?
I sure will, gal. Wait till I get my guitar.
This is wonderful. A song of the West with no one to disturb us. No one but the man in the moon.
Yes, no one but the man in the moon. Robert Armbruster and his 24 wolves and 2,500 Marines. That's solitude.
Once the war ended, the brothers traveled, entertained live audiences, and made a few solo film appearances.
Tell me something. Do you talk like that all the time? No, I talk like this in the pictures. You see, I used to be, in the war, I used to be always Italian, but I saw what they did to Mussolini, so now I'm Greek. Excuse me.
Here's one of the finer things of the evening, a brief interlude with the classics.
In 1945, Arthur and Miriam were grown, and Groucho remarried, this time to Kay Gorsey, who had been married to the dead-end kid Leo Gorsey, and she was 30 years younger than Groucho.
The following year, they had a daughter, Melinda, who would be the apple of his eye for the rest of his life. That same year, the three Marx Brothers reunited to make A Night in Casablanca, mostly to try and reduce Chico's gambling debts, which were always substantial.
Of all the brothers, Groucho had the most successful solo film career, but none of the work that he did by himself on film approached the quality of the work that he did with his brothers. In one of them, Copacabana, he did get a part for his wife, Kay, and she can be seen throughout the film.
It's heaven! Why didn't you tell me about this 10 years ago? The Copa. It's Broadway's biggest, brightest, smartest night spot. Packed with America's most beautiful girls and Hollywood's topmost talent for this glamorous, glorious show of shows, Copacabana. 5 top stars. Or, better make it 6, because Carmen's in there twice. With a little haste and ingenuity, you arrive upstairs to do your numbers, Mademoiselle Fifi. Or is it No, it's Fifi. It's 10:38. Now, at 10:41, you...
Wait a minute. 10:38, 10:41, 3 minutes are missing. What do I do with the 3 minutes?
Don't you think we need a little time together?
From the late 20s until the late 40s, Groucho wore a grease paint mustache. You can see it in the photographs. It's clearly not a real mustache. And then around 1950, he started growing his own. But up until then, when he wasn't working, he didn't wear a mustache, and he looked completely different without his makeup on.
Sometimes he liked to put people on. In those days, people didn't recognize him because he didn't wear a mustache. And so he didn't look the way he did in the movies, in the Marx Brothers movies. So if he went out on the street, he just looked like an ordinary person. He used to say, well, I look like just a little middle-aged Jew.
Groucho Marx left his makeup kit at home tonight. He's the official sportcaster of this spine-tingling, star-studded contest.
By the mid or late 40s, Groucho's career was really at a low point. And then in 1947, he was a guest star on a Bob Hope radio show.
Groucho, what are you doing out here in the desert?
Desert? I've been sitting in the dressing room for 40 minutes.
Groucho, excuse me a minute. I have to make an announcement on the air. Step into the studio with me, will you?
All right. You notice everybody in radio wears wooden shoes?
They were doing a thing called the Walgreen Radio Special. It was an hour show once a year that Walgreen drugstores put on. And they were doing a sketch together, and they threw the script away literally and started ad-libbing, and it got to be very funny and very raucous and quite dirty, but was hilarious. And after the show, John Goodell, who also went to Beverly High, who created Art Linkletter and People Are Funny and all those shows, came up to my father and said, I think I know why you've been a failure in radio, Groucho, up to now. And Groucho said, why? And he said, because you haven't been able to do what you do best, and that's ad-lib. So I'm going to come up with a format that'll let you ad-lib, and that's when he came up with You Bet Your Life.
Goodell said to me, he says, hey, would you like to do a quiz show? And I said, well, I don't know, quiz show, that's about as low as you can sink in show business, isn't it, a quiz show?
You Bet Your Life debuted on radio in October of 1947 and was an instant hit with listeners.
Ralph, okay?
Could have heard the Luck Show if it wasn't for this.
In December of 1949, Groucho and his nervous announcer, George Fenneman, filmed a pilot for CBS to see if the show would translate to a new and increasingly popular medium, television.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the secret word tonight is name. N-A-M-E.
Really?
You bet your life. And here's that sterling Elgin American, the one, the only...
What a ridiculous name.
Oh, that's me, Groucho Marx.
Thank you. Well, here I am again with the $1,000 for one of our couples. George Fenneman, who's first to try for it?
A pair of newlyweds, Groucho, selected by our studio audience just before we went on the air. And here they come now, Mr. and Mrs. Howard Scala. Right up here, ladies.
The show moved to NBC, dropped Elgin American Compacts as a sponsor, and a classic catchphrase was born.
Friends, go in and see a DeSoto Plymouth dealer tomorrow. And when you do, tell them Groucho sent you.
1949 also saw the last official Marx Brothers movie, a regrettable affair entitled Love Happy. Its one saving grace was a very early appearance by a very young Marilyn Monroe. Despite the weekly grind of You Bet Your Life, Groucho made appearances on other programs, including a 1952 special with legends Ethel Barrymore and Tallulah Bankhead.
Well, let's not waste any time. Why don't the three of us neck?
No. That's the first time I ever enjoyed saying no.
And that's the first time I ever enjoyed hearing it.
Enjoy yourselves, darling. It's later than you think.
That's what I say. It's later than you think. Come on, children, let's neck.
Groucho, Ethel does not neck, and neither do I.
Speak for yourself, darling.
Groucho loved doing You Bet Your Life. He said that it was the easiest money he ever made, and it was good money and required really minimal work because they only shot 1 day a week, which was a far cry from what he had to do at the studios.
But his personal life wasn't nearly as fulfilling. Kay's alcoholism, like that of his first wife, Ruth, took its toll, and in 1951, they divorced. One bright note in his home life was being able to relax and spend quality time with his daughter, Melinda.
Well, now you've seen the pool room, you've seen the artwork. And over here we have Gable and Jolson and Hope and Peabody Award and all the stars from CBS and NBC both. I'm going to be impartial about this. Now I'm going to sing a song for you with my daughter, which is something she does very well. She's real talented. You don't need tantalizing. It is not so surprising that you look very strange but nice. Your heart goes pitter-patter. I know just what's the matter because I've been there once or twice. Put your head on my shoulder. You need someone that's older. Rub down with a velvet glove. There is nothing you can take to relieve that passing ache. You're not sick, you're just in love.
Melinda?
Yes?
I have a little boy named Ed.
You have a boy, Ed, Ed?
Yeah. And could I bring him out and see Melinda maybe next summer?
Well, I'd be glad to have him come out here. Does he have any money?
Well, he's got money enough to buy a bicycle. Why don't we let Melinda decide?
Well, all right. Let him get a tandem, and maybe we can work out some kind of an arrangement.
Groucho's relationship with his son wasn't quite as cozy, especially when Arthur wrote a book about his old man that same year.
But I didn't show him the manuscript because knowing how he was pretty picky and he'd probably tear the whole thing apart. And I said, well, wait till someone buys it and then I'll show it to him. So the Saturday Evening Post picked it up for an 8-part serial for $45,000, which was a lot then.
Oh, God, yes.
That really started me on my way. And then I figured I'd show it to him. He couldn't help him. He'd have to like it. He got furious when he read it, and he said, you treated me scurrilously, I looked silly in this book. And he started to sue me, and I had to get my own lawyer, and I didn't think he really would, but it went on for about 4 months.
That same year, Groucho walked down the aisle one last time. His bride was 24-year-old model Eden Hartford. He was 63 at the time. As with his previous wives, Eden had a drinking problem, and the marriage eventually ended in divorce. Unlike Groucho, Harpo had no such discord in his family, spending the remainder of his life surrounded by his loving wife Susan and their 4 children. Like Groucho, Harpo and his daughter appeared on Edward R. Murrow's Person to Person.
Minnie, what do you like most about living in Palm Springs?
Well, I love horseback riding, and in Beverly Hills you couldn't do much horseback riding, so I do have a horse of my own.
In 1956, Groucho and Chico made a rare appearance together on a TV special celebrating Beverly Hills' 50th anniversary.
I'm sorry, I gotta go to the golf course and lay down in the sand trap.
Sand trap?
Yeah, you see, it's a Sunday, and that's when I see my psychiatrist.
I'm sure I used to know him. If I'm not mistaken, we both had the same mother.
Groucho found time to make a few cameo appearances in films as well.
There's Mr. Fun himself, radio's whiz, the king of quiz, Groucho Marx.
Gee, thanks a lot for showing up. There's nothing in the world I wouldn't do for you.
There's nothing I wouldn't do for you. That makes two of us who do nothing for each other.
You envied stars like Gable and Flynn, but now that you are strong and virile...
Rita, I love you.
Oh, and I love you, Georgie. But why did you wait so long to tell me? You know, you never even tried to kiss me.
I never could get that close.
You got it, man.
And in 1957, all three Marx brothers appeared in the same movie, although writer, producer, director Irwin Allen didn't have the sense to put them in the same scene together. At least Groucho got to share the screen with his wife, Eden.
Groucho Marx as Peter Minuit.
My medicine man told me no drink, no smoke.
No drink and no smoke?
No.
What about girls?
No. No girls.
Huh. What about her?
She my daughter. She no girl.
That's what he thinks.
Harpo Marx as Isaac Newton. Anthony Dexter as Columbus. Chico Marx as a monk who befriended him.
Harpo and Chico weren't above picking up some fast cash by hawking products in TV commercials.
For years, my brother Harpo chased the girls, but now we no got to chase them no more, since he tell them about creamy prom. So I say, what's so special about creamy prom? And he's a show me. Prom is a look like cream. She's a whip. Prom is a really creamy permanent. And a creamy prom, she's a last longer than any other home permanent. And now, we're going to show you how creamy prom give you a waiver like you never see before. Hey, slow down to the pics. Just look at the hair, softer like silk. And what a wave. Just look at the way she's a bounce back every time. So get yourself a creamy prom.
Harpo, what would you like most in all the world, right now? No, not that, not that. Imagine it's hot. The sun's beating down on you. Imagine you're in the middle of a burning desert, 100 miles from the nearest oasis. You haven't had a drink of water in 3 days. Now, what do you want most in all the world? Harpo, didn't anyone tell you this is a beer commercial? That's right, you've got it. Labatt's Pilsner Lager Beer.
And of course, Groucho's You Bet Your Life sponsor was DeSoto Automobiles. So...
This is it. The 50-70 DeSoto with a new low price. This year's DeSoto was way ahead of our competitors. And yet, DeSoto prices start right above the lowest. It's a big car with big car comfort and big car beauty that our competitors will be imitating 2 or 3 years from now.
Groucho was such a loyal pitchman, he even ended up touting DeSotos to Ralph Edwards during an episode of This Is Your Life that was supposed to be about Harold Lloyd. They were surprising Harold Lloyd at the Brown Derby restaurant, but Groucho happened to be having dinner there before shooting You Bet Your Life, and he ends up upstaging the show.
What'd you say, Groucho? Ask him if he's got his bowling ball. You got your bowling ball? No, I'm afraid I wouldn't know how to use it. You know, we could do 30 minutes with Groucho Marx and Harold Lloyd here, but we got to get going. You know, 27, that's right. 2 minutes out of that. Well, modest and unassuming, you've often said nobody's going to get me near that studio on Wednesday night. What?
Ask him if he drives to DeSoto.
Oh, shut up, you direct.
You Bet Your Life was so popular, it became the subject of a classic episode of the Jack Benny program, with Jack playing an eager contestant.
You have 15 seconds to decide on a single answer between you. Think carefully and please no help in the audience. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, there's a famous radio and television comedian who was born in Waukegan, Illinois.
Jack Benny, Jack Benny, Jack Benny, Jack Benny, I got it, Jack Benny, Jack Benny, I know it, Jack Benny.
Wait a minute. We know it's Jack Benny, Mr. Forsythe, but that's not the question.
What?
The question is this. Now listen. This is the question. For many years, this bum has been lying about his age. Now, for $3,000... $3,000, can you tell me how old he really is? You've only got 5 seconds more. $3,000, what is Jack Benny's real age?
39.
I'm sorry, but that's the wrong answer, which means the big question next week will be worth $3,500. Thanks and good luck in the DeSoto Plymouth Deal.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Rodney.
In 1959, plans were made to team Groucho, Chico, and Harpo in a sitcom about guardian angels called Deputy Seraph. 72-year-old Chico's declining health made him uninsurable, so the pilot was never finished. This rough footage is all that remains of that ill-fated and ill-conceived experiment.
Fine pair of bunglers, a jealous woman. She'll get even with him. She'll marry him. I'll have to take charge here. Phone, please. I wonder how they do that. You do?
Three. Take four. Take four. Give me the full treatment on the dialect now and really punch it. Go.
He's a piano player. I'm a piano player. I fix him.
Start again and say, look.
Oh. Look. He's a piano player. I'm a piano player. I fix him.
Freeze! Go into action. Where's he going? Where is he?
In 1961, Chico died of arteriosclerosis. In addition to the obvious loss, it meant the Marx Brothers could never again be reunited. That same year, Harpo published his autobiography. In the course of writing it, audio tapes were made of Harpo's reminiscences. Here, then, is the voice of Harpo Marx.
One night I'm playing, and I felt sick, and I practically keeled off the stool. And she says, "Get that son of a bitch back on that stool, play." There was a couple of customers there. So again, I fell off the stool. She says, "What the hell is the matter with him?" to one of the girls. And she said, "Well, he must be sick." So they sent for a doctor, and he looked at me, the doctor, and he said, he's got the measles. She says, "Get him the hell out of here. I don't want any sick Jews around me."
In 1964, Harpo, who had a history of heart trouble, underwent a bypass operation that several doctors and his wife had advised against. 2 days later, he died at the age of 75. You Bet Your Life was canceled after a very healthy 14-year run on radio and television. Groucho went into a semi-retirement, writing more books and making occasional appearances, including an embarrassing turn as God in Otto Preminger's 1968 curiosity, Skidoo.
Between the 1 and 3, there is a 2.
Groucho Marx played God in the Otto Preminger film Skidoodly-Doo-Doo-Doo.
I laughed my head off. So if you see a man walking around without his head, that's me.
The Marx Brothers, and Groucho in particular, experienced a resurgence of popularity in the late 60s and 70s as baby boomers discovered their anarchic and irreverent appeal.
Towards the end of his life, Groucho started doing one-man shows at Carnegie Hall and other places, and he would tell stories and sing songs and basically enthrall audiences which were predominantly made up of a whole new generation of fans.
In April of 1977, Gummo Marx, who had given up performing nearly 60 years earlier, died of a heart attack at 84. 4 months later, Groucho, after suffering several strokes, died of pneumonia at the age of 86. Youngest brother Zeppo, long retired from the agent business, died of lung cancer in 1979. By the time the 80s dawned, all 5 of the Marx Brothers were gone, 6 if you count Manfred. But as long as there are revival houses, cable television, and home video, the Marx Brothers will continue entertaining new fans for many years to come.